Okay, picture this. You're trying to sleep, but you're right in the middle of a busy construction zone. Every few minutes, a loud alarm blares, a heavy metal door slams, and people are shouting right next to your head. Not great, right? Now, imagine you're only a few days old and you were born months too early. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredibly fascinating and highly monitored world of NICU soundscapes. We're going to see exactly why sound in a hospital isn't just, background noise. For premature infants, it's actually treated as a carefully dosed sensory input. There's some mind-blowing science here, so let's jump right in.
Let's start with a really stark reality that basically grounds everything we're about to talk about. When a baby is born prematurely, they are definitely not ready for noise. Sure, fetal hearing technically starts to develop around 18 to 24 weeks, but think about the womb. It's essentially this heavy acoustic filter. It completely muffles high frequencies and wraps the developing baby in the super rhythmic, predictable sounds of their mom's heartbeat and digestion. Their brain is still building, their ears are still adapting, their whole nervous system is just trying to figure out how to regulate itself, and it is totally unequipped for the stark, sharp sounds of the outside world. I mean, they were meant to be in a muffled, aquatic environment, not out in the open air.
Which brings us to part 1, the sensory shock of entering the neonatal intensive care unit.
Look, a NICU is an absolute miracle of modern medicine, right? It provides warmth, life-saving oxygen, feeding support, all of it. But it's also a wildly chaotic acoustic environment. You've got piercing clinical alarms, hissing ventilators, heavy footsteps echoing down the halls, cabinet doors slamming. And the staff, well, they have to communicate about life-saving procedures over this constant, unrelenting hum of equipment. As adults, our brains just sort of filter that out. We drop a clipboard, hear a beep, and move on. But a fragile, premature infant, they can't do that. And to make matters worse, the hard plastic shell of an incubator can actually act like a drum. It echoes and amplifies these mechanical noises. So, a slamming port door can reach over 90 decibels inside that pod. To put that into perspective, that's basically like running a blender right next to your ear. Their tiny nervous system just absorbs every single shock.
Now, historically, we might have thought, hey, any gentle sound is probably good for a baby, right? But there's been a massive paradigm shift in modern neonatal care. The new rule? Sound must follow the baby, not the other way around. You can't just press play on a random lullaby track on your phone and walk away. The infant's own body and their physiological responses have to act as the ultimate feedback loop. They dictate whether a sound is actually helpful or just overwhelming at that exact moment.
So, let's move on to part 2 and look at how this turns sound into actual medicine, moving way beyond just casual background noise.
There's a night and day difference between consumer audio and real clinical therapy. On one hand, you've got your internet ASMR, consumer baby white noise machines, or those unsupervised womb sounds you can just download to an app. And hey, we use those tools all the time for focus or sleep. Why? Because healthy adults can habituate to continuous noise. We can choose our own sensory inputs. But a premature infant completely lacks that neurological maturity. If you just blast unsupervised continuous sound at them, it literally exhausts them. On the other hand, you have true NICU sound therapy. This is a highly responsive, board-certified therapy that constantly reads the infant's cues. It ensures the sound never ever competes with their clinical care. In a NICU, sound is treated like medicine. It has to be respected exactly like an IV medication.
Okay, part 3. What does the science actually say? Let's break down the clinical data.
When we impartially look at the research, we actually see two very different timelines. A systematic review by you and colleagues showed that in the short term, carefully applied music therapy clearly improves immediate physiological markers. We're talking stabilized heart rates, more rhythmic breathing, significantly lower stress hormones, and even better oral feeding volumes, which, if you know anything about preemies, is a massive victory for a baby fighting to grow. But, and this is a big but, a recent secondary analysis of the JAMA long-step trial showed that when we measure long-term neurodevelopmental outcomes years down the road, the results are pretty mixed. So the main takeaway here? Sound therapy is a fantastic, scientifically proven tool for short-term regulation. It's just not a guaranteed magic bullet for long-term brain development.
And a really fascinating 2024 study by Scholkmann and colleagues drives this point home beautifully. They use this technology called near-infrared spectroscopy to actually watch real-time changes in brain oxygenation during creative music therapy sessions. The responses split right down the middle. Some babies showed increases in brain oxygenation during singing, which is a fantastic sign of relaxation and processing, but other babies actually showed decreases in oxygenation. The lesson? Babies are not identical. Sound is absolutely not one size fits all. And that is exactly why having constant clinical monitoring during any auditory therapy is just incredibly crucial.
This actually brings us to a massive aha moment, highlighted by a recent 2025 preprint by Lamb and colleagues. Get this, the sound measured in the room is not necessarily the sound hitting the baby's ear. Just because the nurse's station seems perfectly quiet by standard acoustic measures, that doesn't mean it's quiet inside the incubator. Why? Because sound isn't just airborne. Low-frequency hums from heavy machinery or even heavy footsteps can travel directly through the floor. They turn the incubator's legs into literal acoustic tuning forks that vibrate the mattress. So measuring sound where it actually matters, right at the infant's ear, inside that microenvironment, that is the new frontier of neonatal care.
All right, part 4. Let's talk about the power of voice, which is arguably the ultimate biological regulatory tool. First, let's make sure we're on the same page about what sensory regulation actually is. Simply put, it's the process of using gentle, predictable, and relational inputs to help a premature infant's nervous system organize and settle down. And you know what the most powerful relational input on Earth is? A parent's familiar voice. I love this because it anchors that beautiful, emotional parent-infant connection in firm medical science. A parent's voice carries rhythm. It carries a deeply ingrained familiarity from the womb. It is, quite literally, a profound biological regulatory tool.
So a parent's voice, reading, or even just soft humming, especially when you pair it with skin-to-skin care, acts as this incredible safety cue. It tells the baby, hey, you're safe, you can drop your defenses. But, and this is critical, we have to constantly watch the baby's physical responses. The baby is the feedback loop. Imagine you're standing next to an incubator watching the monitors. You have to ask, is their breathing steady? Are they showing subtly stress cues, like splaying their little fingers out? Are they turning away from you? Are their oxygen levels dropping? Because even a loving parent's voice can actually be overly stimulating on a particularly rough clinical day. The sound input always has to follow the baby's lead.
Which leads us nicely into part 5, safe sound guidelines and some real, actionable rules for the NICU.
We really want to empower families with clear takeaways here. Look, it's completely natural to want to comfort your vulnerable baby with a lullaby, but there are strict rules in the NICU for a very good reason. So here are the big ones. Absolutely do not bring in Bluetooth speakers or outside sound devices. Do not ever place headphones on a premature baby. And please, do not use unverified internet audio tracks that just play on an endless loop. Instead, do ask your care team about bringing in board-certified music therapy. And do ask if the baby is neurologically stable enough today for your voice, soft humming, or maybe reading a story. Consumer audio is just never a safe substitute for clinician-led personalized care.
There's a quote that really sums this all up perfectly. In the NICU, gentle does not mean casual. Gentle means precise. The goal here isn't to force a baby to sleep with a generic, overwhelming soundscape. The actual goal is to carefully support their nervous system only when they are fully ready to receive it. It's about bringing a vital touch of humanity and comfort into a highly technical room, but doing so with extreme, calculated precision.
Because at the end of the day, healing isn't just flashing monitors, loud machines, and vital numbers. Sometimes, healing is rhythm. It's breath. It's a carefully chosen, familiar human voice breaking through the clinical noise. In the profound vulnerability of the NICU, every single sound is a deliberate choice. So it leaves us with this question. What is your baby hearing right now? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible topic. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.